hear a lot when I'm talking with friends about their relationships is I have to speak my truth. I have to tell my truth. I have to tell it like it is. I have to keep it real. And then what typically follows is an unfiltered, uncontained tirade of everything wrong about their partner. And I sit there thinking, wow, if I were on the receiving end of that, I don't know what I would be able to come up with that could be loving or relational or helpful. Ever had that experience? Happens in session too, all of the time. People show up and the first thing they do is launch straight away into a character assassination of the person sitting next to them that, they are supposed to love and respect and share life with. And then they ask for intimacy. Not really a good strategy. In relational life therapy, we would call that unbridled self-expression. My name is Desirae Ysasi, and I am the Director of Training and Certification for the Relational Life Institute. And I've been a certified relational life therapist for about 7 or 8 years. Something that we work with our clients around in relational life therapy, or RLT, is understanding what patterns of communication, what patterns of interaction are they going toward that actually are big barriers to getting the intimacy that they want. We call these losing strategies. There are 5 of them, and we call them losing strategies because essentially when you employ them, you lose out on intimacy and connection. So the one that I was just sort of referring to that a lot of my friends and clients and even me fall victim to from time to time is unbridled self-expression. Thinking that speaking everything on our mind, everything that's on our hearts, without pausing to consider what it might be like to be on the receiving end of that, we somehow think that that's connection, and it really isn't. It's a wall of words coming at our partner. And depending on the things that they've been through in their life, in their history, that can be really overwhelming. So let me break this down a little bit more, because actually unbridled self-expression can show up in a number of ways. Yes, it can look like a verbal explosion of words. It can be a tirade. It can be accusation after accusation or complaint after complaint after complaint. Certainly it can show up as yelling. It can show up as speaking really quickly so that the other person can't get a word in edgewise. These are some of the really obvious ways that unbridled self-expression can show up in how we communicate. There's some other ways that maybe are a little sneakier or maybe you haven't considered as forms of unbridled self-expression. This one happens a lot in session, where your clients use really hyperbolic or superlative language to describe what's going on. So let me give you an example. Have you ever been sitting with a couple where one is saying to the other, "You always do this," or "You never do this," or "You are the most selfish person I've ever known in my life. You are so cold, so unbelievably cold." This is a form of unbridled self-expression. It is extreme, it's immoderate, and it often invites argument, right? Because the other person on the receiving end of this is thinking, "I'm not the most selfish person in the world. I just did this thing for you last week that you really loved and appreciated. What do you mean I'm cold? I brought you coffee this morning and said I love you," right? Because when we speak in these extreme, superlative, immoderate ways, we inevitably are going to trigger some defensiveness in our partner. And probably they're either going to start arguing with us and coming up with examples of why they're not the thing that we just said, or it's going to be too overwhelming and they're going to shut down. They're going to withdraw. They're not going to be in the conversation with you anymore. Both of those things are problematic because we're not getting what we need. We're not able to have our message heard. They're not able to receive any part of what we're saying, and we're out of connection. We're out of intimacy. And now it's just you versus me. We are debating our points of view in some way, shape, or form. Or the other person has just checked out of the conversation. Either mentally, they're there, but the lights are on and no one's home, or they walk off, right? Who wants to stand there and be called the most selfish person in the world? So notice if your clients are using that kind of hyperbolic superlative language. You might have someone that uses the losing strategy of unbridled self-expression. Here's another one. Rather than thinking about your clients for a second, think about your own experience with your friends or your family. Have you ever been at a dinner party or out with friends, out with other couples, and one person is telling a story about their partner that is pretty inappropriate? They're telling a story that is actually embarrassing for the partner, or it's really private, it's really personal, it's not something that they would want shared in a room full of people. And you can see as the partner is telling this story, the other person is horrified. They're shocked. And when they finally say something, the person telling the story usually says some version of, "What are you talking about? It's just a joke. Why are you so sensitive? Come on, you're making a big deal out of nothing. It's funny, right?" This is terrible for the person that the story has just been told about. And the rest of the people in the room are often collateral damage to the story that was just told, because you can feel the ickiness and the violation that story was for the other person. This is another form of unbridled self-expression. Essentially, the speaker is not giving any thought, care, understanding, consideration for what the message is like for the other person. So this is kind of the core piece of unbridled self-expression. It's lacking empathy. It's lacking any sort of awareness of another person's perspective, and it's often quite entitled. I think I have the right to say this because I think it's funny. I'm entertained by it because I have the right to speak my truth. I have the right to tell it like it is. Okay, maybe, but what has it just cost you in the landscape of your relationship with this person? I'll tell you what it's cost you. It's cost intimacy. So when we're working with our clients, we can take the behavior head on. We can say things like, "Hey, that's not right. You shouldn't do that." And we're not wrong. But what I think is more effective is helping them to see the cost that this behavior has on their relationship. Look, you can tell your truth all day long if you want to, but when you do it in this way, what do you see your partner do? Do you see them listening? Do you see them softening? Do you see them wanting to respond with generosity? Are they wanting to give you what you're asking for? Are they wanting to do anything about the complaint that you just launched into? Probably not. So there's got to be a better way. Let me teach you a better way. Let me teach you a more skilled way to share what is on your heart so that your partner can receive it and hear it and respond to it. So one of the really important skills that I teach my clients that deal with unbridled self-expression is I teach them how to cultivate a containing boundary. So boundaries, as we talk about them in relational life therapy, really refer to the internal psychology, the internal experience. It's not something that is spoken out loud. It's something we do inside ourselves to protect the emotional and intimate space. And so folks with unbridled self-expression are often lacking a strong containing boundary. Let me put it to you another way. A containing boundary is something inside me that protects the world from the bad parts of my behavior. It keeps in the things that, if I let them out into my relationship, cost me intimacy. So I have 3 questions that I ask myself and that I teach my clients to ask themselves before they allow something through that containing boundary. Is it true? Is it respectful? And is it necessary? And if I am going to say something out loud to my partner, it's got to be all 3 things. according to me: true, respectful, and necessary. And let me tell you something. That last question, is it necessary? That is particularly challenging for people with unbridled self-expression, because we think everything we have to say is necessary. And you could probably find a way to say something respectfully, and you can discern if something is more or less true. But we also have to keep in mind, do I really need to say this thing to my partner right now? And here's how I figure out, is it necessary? What am I to gain, and what could it potentially cost me? How important is it to my relationship to speak this thing? Because maybe I can say something respectfully and in a true way, but is my partner exhausted? Have they just come home from a really long, difficult day at work? Did I just hear them upstairs kind of getting into a little bit of a shouting match with our teenager? Is this really the time to bring up something now that's on my mind that's difficult? Maybe it's not necessary in this moment. And so if it's not all three things, then I contain it. I keep it within my containing boundary until or unless I can get it to fit within those three rules. So that's a good one. You could try that with yourself, and you can try that with your clients and see if it helps to contain some of that immoderate, unbridled, unfiltered self-expression. And then ask them to pay attention when they use that, and then they decide, okay, yes, it is necessary, so I'm going to speak this. Is your partner able to listen? Are they showing up in a different way than what they used to? Are they leaning in? Are they offering to do something different? Watch the impact that it has. You'll see that when you apply this containing boundary and you're more moderate and more thoughtful in your self-expression, there's only intimacy to gain. That is true connection, and that is healthy communication. So unbridled self-expression, one of the 5 losing strategies in relational life therapy. I'd love to tell you about all the rest of them, so subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful, and I will see you in a future video.